we know who our audience is. So feel free to type it in the chat, but let us know what course you study, please. We all do medicine. So yeah, we're interested to know what you all study. We've got another medic. Hi, Zoe. Fourth year medic. Medic who's intercalating, graduate entry medic. Fantastic. Another graduate entry medic. So it seems like we've got a lot of medics again.
And a lot of grads, so I feel like maybe a lot of you already know a lot about research.
Yeah, you might be able to give us some tips as well. So the next question is, have any of you secured any extracurricular research projects? So have any of you got anything going on, anything coming up? Let us know. Yes, a few of you. So if you're happy to share the details of what you're up to, we'd be more than interested to know. And also, how did you secure your projects? We're really interested to know what process you went through to get your own projects. Wow, quite a few people on this session have got projects going on. That's amazing. And sheer serendipity. I love that.
It's helpful for everyone else to know how you got it as well. It gives you ideas for the next time you want to find a project.
Placement contacts. We love contacts. Making contacts is huge. Intercalation. Res supervisor. So you're all networking already. That's amazing. Thank you, guys.
So I'll start off on then summer internships. So I'm not sure if this is open to people who are doing graduate courses, sadly, but if you are on an undergraduate medicine course, then this is certainly an opportunity for you. So there's two types, national and international. The national projects are, like, for instance, there's one based in Cambridge called Amgen. There's another one based in Manchester by the Manchester Biomedical Research Centre. So these internships, they are like a pre-made program, and the program will include things like an 8 to 12 week placement with a supervisor conducting research, which, if you guys who seem to be quite experienced anyway, probably know that 8 to 12 weeks is not enough for data collection for any kind of research. They also tend to be very much laboratory research placements. So if you were going to go ahead with one of these internships, you'd absolutely have to let your supervisor know in advance that you want this work to be publishable, and they would tweak the title accordingly to try and make it publishable. Sometimes you're applying directly to a title that's already been pre-made for you, but sometimes you're also applying to a title like, just a supervisor or a lab, for instance, at which point then there is more leeway to make it more something that you're interested in. Because these placements tend to happen not only just in the UK but internationally, for instance in Japan or Germany, etc., they also tend to have a culture program attached to it, so you can go and explore the city, etc., or the country itself, and they'd have like a lecture series going alongside it to try and help you with your research skills. The other thing that I'd say that is interesting about summer internships is if you're interested in a particular centre and you want to do a PhD there, a lot of these internships, most of them, ask for you to have an interest in a PhD, and then some of them go further and say that they want you to have an interest in doing a PhD at their specific institute or university, etc. And because of this reason, they have a lot of requirements. Like they want like a CV, a cover letter, you to have like a really high grades and to have good references. So something to consider. After the placement, you'd absolutely, if you wanted it to get published, the work that you were doing, you'd probably have to keep working on it. Maybe not necessarily at the centre. I know people who've done the 8 to 12 weeks, did the poster presentation as part of the internship, conferences, etc. But then afterwards, they continue to work on it with their supervisor to try and get it published. But it's a good, I guess, step into the door. On that similar note, studentships are the same thing. You do it over the summer, but it's all organised by you. So you'd find the supervisor, you'd find the research topic, everything. You'd get the ethics approval and stuff. All the studentship is going to do is give you the funding. And then afterwards, you have to show how you've used that funding. It's sort of like a grant, like any grant really for research. And you go to, they also offer you a conference as well to do a poster presentation of everything you've done. So the nice thing here is you don't have to worry as much about grades and getting those references and things, because it's the supervisor who'd be filling out the funding form for you for the studentship in most cases. But the nice thing is if you go into the studentship and internships websites that are offering these, they have like a testimonial section. So if you're really struggling to find a supervisor within the special area you're interested in, then if you just go onto, I don't know, Biochemical Society and look at their studentship and you see who got it in the past and who was their supervisor, you automatically know that they are like an altruistic supervisor who's not only gone through the process before, but is clearly wanting to take on a student, has done it in the past and it's worked out successfully. So one thing I should have mentioned at the start is everything I'm saying and everything we're all going to say is in a handouts that we'll provide for you later. So I have a massive list of studentships and internships, both nationally and internationally, that you can apply to. COVID-19 has made it difficult for some of them to continue, but I'm sure by next year they'll probably be back up and running again. So at this point, does anybody have any questions?
None yet in the chat.
No problem. I've also written some more tips in the handouts as well as to exactly what I'd recommend you put in your cover letter and your CV and things, but it seems like a lot of you are already grads as well, so you probably have been through some of the process.
We have actually just had a couple of questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I think one is related. I'll just read them. With graduate entry medicine courses, 8 to 12 weeks of summer break is very rare as they are accelerated degrees. I only have a month during the summer. Would it still be possible to do an international internship, I think that's supposed to say, for 1 month only?
Right, I've seen maybe 1 or 2 where they allowed graduates to apply, but most of these are only for undergraduates. If you apply for a studentship, that's different because it's just the funding. But again, a lot of them highlight the word undergraduate. So I think you'd have to, if there was a particular studentship or internship you're interested in, I think you should email them and let them know of your situation, and if you'd still be eligible for it. I'm so sorry, I don't think it is open to graduate courses. But that's not to say that you couldn't still do something over the summer if you organised it with a supervisor, maybe still use the studentship and the testimonials to find someone. So what's the next question, Holly?
I've just answered it in the chat.
Oh, brilliant, no problem. Okay, if there's any more questions, I hope that answered their question on studentships.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Okay, so with clinical side of research, this is probably what's most relevant to medical students, but obviously there are lots of different research opportunities out there, and do as much as you can in terms of what interests you, but most students tend to stick to the clinical side of things because that's a lot more accessible at this point. There are a few things that are commonly done by medical students. So first things first, you have your standard audits. If you haven't come across audits yet, I recommend just immersing yourself with a few articles. Again, in the handout, there'll be a few links that you can look through to figure out what exactly an audit is and whether it's for you. It's done by a lot of clinicians across lots of different hospitals, so there will always be audit opportunities out there. So it's definitely worthwhile just having a look for these. Additionally, systematic reviews and literature reviews are something that's done often by medical students. Systematic reviews tend to be a lot more publishable, so definitely try and find supervisors that are willing to do that with you. And again, I think Holly mentioned in the chat, just be honest with your supervisor from the beginning. When you're reaching out to them, just make it clear that as a medical student, you want to try and get yourself published if possible. And they'll be upfront with you and say, okay, it may happen, it may not, but we'll try our best. That's probably the best answer you can get straight away. So just be honest, and they'll communicate that sort of honesty with you as well. Um, Finally, there are also letters to editors, and these are short letters that just comment on an article that's written or published. And these are very difficult to get published. Not a lot of them are accepted, but it's worthwhile doing. It's worth doing if you're trying to hedge against one of the publications that you're doing on the other side. So if you do systematic reviews or literature reviews and you're trying to publish it and you don't know if it's going to be published within your med school career, it might be worth doing a few letters to editors to see if you can get that published points and get those PubMed IDs that you need for your AFP and foundation applications. Does that make sense? If anyone has any questions, feel free to put it on the chat. I appreciate we're running low on time, so if you want to go through a bit more details, well, you can always message our social media, but also look at the handouts as well.
So securing laboratory projects is very similar to what George was saying about the clinical side of things. The only thing I'd add is at Young Academics, the way we go about it is we have a spreadsheet, and each column has a different subheading on the spreadsheet. So for instance, all the details you need to know about a particular supervisor. So in order to get a project, you end up, if you don't have a specific research interest, like a very detailed research interest too, where you could probably find one researcher who's running a lab on it, or one researcher who's like a clinician in a hospital for it, then you do end up sending a lot of more general emails to supervisors. I still recommend personalizing them, but they tend to not have as much of a good response. So you need to like document how many people, who you have already contacted, who you've not contacted. So the spreadsheet's just very simple, like supervisor's name, their title and department, their email address, their research interest, and then like a confirmation column. And that column, you change color depending on if they've replied or not. So if it's red, they've said, no, I have nothing available. If it's green, they've said yes. If it's yellow, they've not replied yet. And then after that, I'd recommend at like maybe at 2 weeks or 3 weeks time, just sending one or two reminder emails just to let them know, because we've noticed in our society that once you send the reminder email, you do have a much better success rate in getting a reply back. And most people are enthusiastic to take you on. In terms of finding the actual email addresses and the names of these different people, what I'd recommend is, say you're interested in neonatology, I'd recommend going on to like, Within Shore Hospital, looking at the neonatology department. And usually if you know the ending of most email addresses, you're able to work out how to find that supervisor and contact them. You probably guess it. So Within Shore, it's just the first name dot last name at uhsm.nhs.uk. So it'd be similar for so many others. And again, we've got some examples in the handouts for Manchester students and how to contact local hospitals and their email addresses that you usually use, and also some extra links to different databases with lots of email addresses of teaching groups and stuff like that would be very keen to take on students. Likewise, specifically on laboratory stuff, universities and institutions have pages dedicated to their labs, and also pages dedicated to ongoing research. So again, we've got links in the handouts on where you can sift through all those different researchers, find the main person who's leading that lab, and just say to them, quite frankly, this is advice I was given, that even if you're not necessarily working directly under them, you could like suggest that you can work under a PhD student. I mean, you'll honestly get the same amount of value from that as well. If you're doing a mini project, it just kind of alleviates the pressure a little bit from some professors who've got a lot of work on their plate. And then I'd highly recommend with the laboratory stuff to reach out to private companies as well as universities and institutions. For instance, at Manchester, we have a science park called the Manchester Science Park, and there is a building called City Labs. In there's so many companies that have taken up the space. For instance, Trust Tech, who are the NHS Trust Tech, who take up like different medical technologies into the NHS directly, and they're constantly doing research, constantly doing quality improvement and stuff like this. Like they are a hub in the UK to absolutely go to if you're interested in medtech. So just look out for things like that, and network as well to find these places. Once you have, this is what I was going to say. Once you have done like a project or whatever, I highly recommend you go through, like you look forward forward into the future, it doesn't matter what specialty portfolio you look at, they all have very specific requirements that you could kind of utilize your mini project and do something more with. So for instance, we highly recommend submitting your poster of your research to a conference. And just so you know, posters have to be of unpublished work only. And also to try and do a talk on it. When you do a talk on it, get feedback from the audience, but also get a supervisor to assess you on your teaching and stuff. And that would also help you get points in your portfolio. Submit your abstract for a prize, especially national prizes that are open to trainees as well, get you 4 points on portfolio. Again, I mentioned teaching and getting a reference from your supervisor at the end, maybe even publishing an ebook with them. There's no cost to that, and it's quite simple. Lots of websites explaining, detailing the points on how to do that. So we highly recommend, you utilize the opportunity more than just using it as a one-off thing that you did. And then the final thing that I'll say before I head on to leave it over to Holly is local groups. So for instance, any company, but then also charitable organizations, NGOs, things like that are conducting research. And sometimes it's in the form of reports. So again, that's not exactly something that will get you PubMed ID, but it may be of interest to you, because a lot of these groups do. I have to give an example. It's really hard to explain. It depends on what you're interested in. So for instance, I'm really interested in humanitarian conflict response stuff. So there is an institute for that in Manchester, but there's also lots of other charitable groups like MedAct, Manchester, and Docs Not Cops, Patients Not Passports, and they're always running research, like they call it research activism, publishing in so many different papers and things. And on top of that, they're doing like lots of science communication, public engagement that would give me that opportunity to present my research, present what I found to the public and stuff. And that's like, these are essential skills and amazing things to put down on your portfolios as well. So I highly recommend like branching out and finding opportunities with companies as well. So for instance, if you were interested in medtech, then I know so many people who've gotten onto research projects with like Babylon Health and stuff. And this is exactly what you should be looking for.
So I think a lot of my slides are going to be things that you or a lot of you will already know, considering a lot of you have got projects going on. But networking is the biggest way that you can find research opportunities and opportunities in general, not just those to do with research. So networking in simple terms is making connections with like-minded people. And that's what finding research projects is all about. So obviously you're all here today at a conference. So you're networking while you're here. Hopefully you're making use of the networking option available on this platform. But if not, you might be making connections elsewhere from people that are also attending. Networking also includes other things like attending grand rounds and multidisciplinary team meetings at the hospital. Someone in the chat has mentioned that they gained their research opportunity through pure being in the moment, really, at the hospital, and that's amazing. That's what networking's all about. It's also about social media as well, which I'll come on to in a minute. But networking, you've got to put in what you expect to get out of it, basically. You can find supervisors by networking, but you can also find people to connect with that then may have connections themselves that they can put you in contact with. You might find people who are similar to you, students who are interested in a particular area of medicine or research, and you might set up your own research project there, looking into things that you can from the comfort of your home at the moment anyway. So networking really is the thing that can start you off on your research journey, and making the most of it will make all the difference. So social media is obviously huge right now and has been for quite a while, and you're all probably aware of the big social media chains, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and they can all be utilized really well to make these connections and network with these people. In particular, LinkedIn. I'm not sure how many people on here have LinkedIn, but if you don't have it, I would highly recommend that you do get it. You can make your own profile, and it looks rather like a CV, so that people can connect with you, can connect with others, and people are able to see exactly what you're all about, what you study or have studied, things that you do extracurricularly, research projects that you've undertaken. You can include, basically you can put on your whole professional life. I can see that someone has shared their LinkedIn profile, and that's amazing. All feel free to share, and we can all connect with each other. But yeah, you can make your own CV on LinkedIn that people can then use to get to know you, work out what you're about, and make connections with you. And you never know, you might get a message one day that says, you are exactly the type of person we're looking for. We're carrying out a research project. Do you want to be involved? And that's what we kind of are all aiming for. Something I'm going to say is just remember that there is an etiquette. So even though social media is an informal platform, you are still engaging on a formal capacity. So do remember, please, thank yous. Always send the first message at least with the official title, if they're a doctor, if they're a professor, if they're a Mr. or a Mrs. or whatnot. Do a little bit of research before you send that first email. And obviously on the first email, don't just go straight in and say, I want to do a research project. What can you offer me? Explain yourself, explain why you're interested. Just remember that etiquette that comes with sending these messages, either direct message on a social media platform or an email. So yeah, that's basically social media and networking in a nutshell. There's loads more in the handout, but I don't want to speak too much about it because I'm imagining you're all already really great at it because a lot of you have already got projects going on. But if you do have any questions, let us know, and we will post a feedback form in the group chat for you all to access. And then once you do that, you'll get the slides and the handouts. And thank you all for attending.
I just have to, Holly does this every time. Holly, she's really good on social media, and she has an amazing following on Instagram, an amazing approach on her website and everything. It's fantastic. That two of her, technically all 3 projects she's gotten onto, research projects, have been because somebody's reached out to her rather than her applying or reaching out to anyone. Just people have noticed how amazing she is and reached out. So I feel like although social media is thrown about a lot, that it's a good platform, Holly is a perfect example, but it actually does work. And even at the medical school, Holly's so active, and on social media, all her, if you just look at Dreams of a Medic and see all the initiatives she's doing, you'll understand she's got her toes dipped in absolutely everything. And no wonder so many people are so attracted to taking Holly on board because of that, because not only do you get to see somebody's personality through there, and that kind of makes you want to work with them because you realise that they're hardworking and they're kind, etc. But also you can see that they're very professional about everything that they do. So at the medical school, Holly's done a lot. So that's how, Holly, am I right in saying that's how you got a project that way as well, just from being very active with student and professor interactions and stuff?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is how you present yourself and the little groups that you get involved in. And I think if you come across and show that you are actively seeking out these opportunities, that you're willing to get involved, it really stands you in good stead for people to get to know your name, and you get passed around departments, and eventually something will come your way. Obviously I strongly suggest looking for research projects yourself as well, because I've been very fortunate in how I've got my research projects, and it doesn't always happen for everyone. But actively looking for them, yes, you may get a few knockbacks, we all do, but eventually something will come up and it'll be absolutely perfect for you. And everything that Komal and George have said about going about things is exactly how it works. And Young Academics is a success story for that. So yeah, patience is huge. Just be yourself and get yourself out there, your name known, and things will come up.
In terms of actually determining whether a project is or is not very publishable, I do have some advice on that. So I highly recommend, when you talk to the supervisor, how well they've got a good plan in their head about how they're going to go about it. So if they have an indefinite deadline, then I think that's quite a telltale sign that maybe it's not going to be publishable. Like if they've taken on students in the past and how well that went. Also, if it's an audit, admittedly, I have to say that it's not very well publishable because it tends to be a one center, one like small population group in the middle of Manchester or something kind of study, and that's not very publishable. It's a publishable audit if you're using like patient information from like multiple centres and stuff. And at Young Academics, we actually found an audit that was doing that, and it was going to change guidelines completely as well. It was a lot of work. It was a Preston project. It was a lot of work, but people are still interested in it. So exactly, like there are still good audits out there, but I try and assess that a little bit. And then likewise, if it's a systematic review or a meta-analysis, that's considered primary research. So that's very publishable. You'd get full points on that, especially if you're a first author. But if it's like just a normal literature review, then that's not primary research. And as George said, it's really subjective. So you get published maybe, but it's not as publishable as like the other stuff because it's primary research. And then letters to editors, yeah, it is hard. But one advice that I was given is to do look at some low leverage journals. But when you do look at those, just be wary of the prices. Sometimes they are quite scam-like. So yeah, you shouldn't be paying like thousands of pounds to try and get a letter published, basically.
With the letters to editors, you can try to apply for funding, just to, circumvent paying like £700 or £1,000 just to publish a little 500-word letter. But yeah, it's another avenue to just follow, and it might not be the primary way of getting published, but it's worth having it as a backup plan as well.
Yeah, and I don't think letters to editors, when you're talking about the portfolio requirements for specialities, I don't think it's considered like as part of the point system. So because it's not primary research either. So I would recommend focusing on some of the other areas of primary research if you can.
I think someone asked how useful LinkedIn is and does anyone have any success stories? And I just want to say that you might not necessarily get a research project straight away, but it's making the connections that will then enable you to get a research project potentially, or enable you to make a connection with a person who you think, I'm quite interested in looking into this on a research basis, but I don't really know where to start. Such a body, is interested in that field. I wonder if I could send them a message, connect with them, and maybe they might want to do something similar and we can work from there. So while success stories from LinkedIn may not be huge, I think you need to look at it more on a smaller scale first before you then, it's not like you're going to create an account and the next day you'll get a message saying, do you want to take part in this research project? Because that doesn't happen. But I think you've got to take every little opportunity and every connection and see where it goes. Having an account, you're already out there for people to find you and to see what you've done and to see what you're all about. And that's one step further than you are without a LinkedIn account. So I think it's well worth making an account if you've not made one. I mean, I don't use LinkedIn every single day, but I log on and always have messages from people who I don't know per se. And one of them, could be something little or it could be something huge, and they have come to me or to you. You've not had to go to them, if that makes sense. And that's all just from having an account and putting on everything that you've done and everything that you're doing. And it does attract people. So it's definitely worth it, I think.
Yeah, and I just have to say a story when you said that, Holly. I agree. Most people don't get messages like on the just right off the bat. But I remember making a LinkedIn account for my brother for the first time, and he's doing mechanical engineering. So I admit it's not the same as medicine. In about 20 minutes, he got 2 interviews from one from Honda and one from somewhere else. And I was telling my brother, listen, right, they're not just they framed it like a chat, like they're about to have a chat with them on the phone. I was like, they're not having a chat with you, they're about to interview you. He was so new to university at that time, he didn't know what was going on, but he tried his best and it didn't really work out. But yeah, you can absolutely, people reach out to you, and people have reached out to me for similar reasons. It's not always research based either, but they're still fantastic opportunities. So we've got some questions in the chat. As a medical student and biomedical sciences graduate, I'm not sure if I should be asking for paid research placements because I don't want to reduce the chances of getting the placements in the first place. Any advice on that? Well, I think if you've gone through submitting grant proposals in the past, then I think maybe you could try and do a placement and then also get a grant for it as well. I think if you're looking for a position, usually if a lab wanted like a part-time intern or something, they post it, and there are like institutions that you probably just have to look through their occupations list or like call them up and ask them if they have any vacancies. I've never heard of somebody asking once they've secured the project afterwards if they can get paid for it. Usually, yeah, you'd get a grant. So for instance, the Studentships, again, I don't know if you'd be suitable for that because you're a graduate, but some of them are for graduates. They are paying you per hour, and also for like any expenditures of like laboratory materials, stuff like that. So I'd look into some grant options. And to be honest, once you found a supervisor, they know where to get the grants. I remember once with my professor, I did a project on trauma biomarker studies. She found me the grant for it. So, and I wasn't getting paid. She just found me some money for the laboratory supplies. But when I wanted to do a conference, I told her about this, and she goes, "Oh, I know exactly where to get funding, or whatever." And she got me £4,000, like just I don't know where from, but she managed to secure it. So, ask the supervisor to help you get that grant. And to be honest with you, once you've done a biomedical sciences degree, I've done that too. So has Holly, and then you've also done a medicine degree. Like, the asking to be paid isn't rude. It like most people are getting paid. So yeah, I wouldn't hold back from it. I just try and seek advice from the supervisor where to get the funding for that particular project. There are some other questions as well. There's something about letters to the editor can provide points for internal medical training applications as well as AFP, not worthy as much as primary research. Yeah, I agree. Will handouts and slides be sent separately? So once you finish the feedback form, there'll be like a little thank you, and then right underneath it, there's 2 links to download it from our Google Drive. So if I just share my screen, I can show you what it looks like. So it will link you to this page, and you'll just click download here. And yeah, I've got full contents of everything we said. And if you scroll, you can see it's not an exhaustive list, but I've gone through the main ones of internships, the main international internships too. There's some great ones like going to Switzerland and stuff. And yeah, funding studentships and stuff, and a bit about, yeah, there's just loads of stuff here. And also right at the end, if I just skip to the end, it's got my story, Holly's and George's, how we got into research and how we personally found projects and things. So that might be helpful for you guys. So yeah, if you have any other questions, let us know. Oh, I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. I hope it was useful because I feel like a lot of you have already got onto projects and stuff. I do know that if you want to know how to actually get your work published onto a journal, I recommend some lectures by the Physiological Society. They often run events on things like this as well, and they're really excited to like support students on this, and it's free to get a student membership with that society. So if you ask them for advice on how to get published, or you watch through their previous lectures that they've had on it, then I thought that'd be a really good start.
Also, I don't know if we've advertised our work, but if you're based in Manchester and you're looking for projects, what we try to do is link supervisors to students, and we try and cut out the middleman in terms of finding out projects. Well, actually, we become the middleman, I guess.
Yeah, we are.
But yeah, we try to find research projects for you guys, and if you follow us on social media, the links are on the group, on the chat. And leave us a message if you wanted to ask any questions as well. You can stay up to date with all of our projects.
We're really keen as well, like when people have say they had